Welcome back to another video of highlights here with the Western Australian Poker League live table. My name's Jason. Joining me today is Paul, one of our players from last week and the last few weeks. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
So we're having a look at last week's video of highlights. We've got a few good hands to look at. Just before we get to them, let's have a quick chat about your night, Paul. How did you find the night go for you?
Yeah, good. I really enjoyed it, as I have every time that I've played at the WAPL. Tonight was a little bit more slow for me cards-wise. Gotten a few pots, but nothing too spectacular. But it was certainly an entertaining night. There were a number of big hands that I got to observe or go on around me, a couple of which we'll be seeing over the coming 20 minutes.
hmm Excellent. And yourself, unfortunately for you, like the last few weeks, actually, you had a very, very good run. So I suppose variance caught up with you, huh?
Well, yeah, it did in a way. Some of my friends who I've talked to about the sessions I've had would say that I'm possibly the luckiest person in Perth over the last few weeks in this game.
hmm
I'm not going to argue with them. I don't like to tempt fate. But yes, I've certainly had a good run to date. And whilst I didn't have a fantastic run, it was nothing disastrous either. So I just hope that streak continues.
Definitely. Well, best of luck with that. Okay, so let's get on to talking about some of these hands. A lot of the players this week we see returning from previous weeks. I think the only new player we had to the table this week was actually Blair, who was sitting two to your right.
Correct. Yes, I've played with Blair before at the casino.
hmm
So as you said, it was his first night here. So I thought I had a bit of an idea of how he plays and everything like that. So, but it's always good to get a fresh player or fresh face in. It adds a different dynamic to the game. If you just play with the same people day in day out, I find that it gets a little bit boring because you all know each other's tricks, and it makes things a lot less interesting.
Definitely agreed with that. Well, you'll be happy to know that over the coming weeks we have quite a lot of interest and quite a few new faces showing up as well.
So I've heard. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, excellent. So let's get on to the videos. Thank you very much for joining us here. Hope you get a little bit of info, a little bit of fun out of the videos we have for you today, and we'll see you at a game soon. All right, so we're going to move to our first hand here that we've selected for the highlight reel.
Yes, I think I remember this hand. Um, it's an interesting one, so I've got a few things to say about this.
Right, okay, excellent. Well, I'm just dealing out the cards.
I think as well. This one was quite early in the night, as far as
It
I
is,
recall.
yeah. We are in
Yeah.
chronological order here, so you see a few of the players early on move out of the hand. Jack 7 of diamonds with Buck, he's raised it up to 30.
Scott with the call. Nothing too out of the ordinary there.
Nope, and Jackson has his ace 9, decides to also make the call as well. So a bit of a loose range of raises and calls here for a start, I think.
Yeah, I think. Well, maybe if we just pause it there for 1 second.
Sure.
It looks like Buck is just taking a fairly speculative hand. He's in late position there, so he's decided that no one else has come in yet, so he'll take a little stab at it. Scott coming in behind there, I imagine he's just looking to see a flop with a hand that can flop a few nice disguised big hands.
Yes.
And Jackson, getting a relatively good price on the big blind, decides to call as well.
All right, we'll move right ahead. Of course, we've seen a very big flop with Scott here,
Yep.
and Buck hitting his flush draw as well.
Yeah, so I think Buck's bet 70. It's Scott with a quick call. I guess Scott's slow playing there.
We see the diamond come on the turn.
Yeah,
Buck makes his flush.
Yep, and looks like he's very quickly bet again.
Hmm.
And Scott's having a think now.
So he bets 70 into a pot of, I think, about 230 at that point.
So quite a small bet, given the strength of his hand. I'm not sure if he's done that just to be a bit tricky, or what his reasoning for that is. He's just taken the same sizing. So
Well, Scott made the call. We've seen an ace come on the river, so Buck obviously with the better hand. Does decide to check the river at this point. I'm not sure whether he's trying to trap or whether he thinks that Scott maybe has the flush as well, or potentially, of course, the book. Scott taking this opportunity to bet out, probably hoping to push Buck off the pot.
Well, yeah, it's an odd river situation, because I would have expected Buck to just bet his flush there. I know I would have. And then when he checks, like you say, maybe he was trying to trap, but then Scott bet such a large amount that maybe he sort of got a little bit worried and decided to just call there in the end with his flush. Worried of a full house, maybe a bigger one.
That's it. You do have the paired board there, so Scott did just call him on two of those bets, so you've always got the potential that he's flopped a monster, a bigger monster than he did flop, I should say.
Yeah, that's right.
Another little raise from Buck, this time with Jack 4 of spades.
He must be feeling the suited jack hands, I think.
I'm guessing that must be the case, yeah. Of course, now we move over to see Eric re-raises with pocket 10s to 70. King Jack moves out of it, and we move over to Jackson.
That's pretty good one. This is why he got us to change his name. Okay, and we've got a raise from
Jackson,
up to
pocket queens. 255 is the bet. He's going to be putting Eric on the spot here, I think.
I think you're right. I think Eric was having none of Buck's raise there. Maybe he saw his earlier shenanigans, decided he was going to take charge of the hand, and Jackson likewise has decided that he thinks his queens are good, and he's going to shut things down before the flop even comes.
Now, bear in mind, I'm just going to pause that right here. So Eric has just made the fold here. Pocket 10s. Easy laydown, do you think?
It's tricky in that spot, given I think the stack sizes there were about 1,000. So when the effective stacks, that's what Jackson had at the start of the hand. I think if Eric calls there, he's somewhat committed to the pot. I think perhaps he's decided that he's going to fold because Jackson hadn't got out of line that much at that point in the night. So perhaps Eric just decided, look, just better to stay out of a tricky situation, because if the flop comes all low cards and Jackson starts putting out some big bets, it's going to be really difficult for Eric to maneuver through the hand after that. So I think he just decided to take... Yeah, I think he just took the safe option, really.
I think that is something I was going to say. I mean, Jackson and Eric do have some history over the last few weeks of play. Jackson, of course, not having missed one of our WAPL live tables yet, and Eric knows that he's a tight player, and probably actually put him on that overpair with the re-raise as well.
Yeah, Eric's he's a very astute player. I've sat at his tables a few times, and he obviously knows a thing or two about the game. And yeah, I think you're right. He just read the situation pretty well and took the safe and smart option and just got out of the way.
Excellent. Well, good lay down there by Eric. And moving on to our next hand, we see the chip counts at the moment. Buck with a little under 1,000, most of the rest of the players hovering around 2k. In this hand we see Tanya with pocket aces straight up.
Very nice.
Yep, just the hand you want to see on this table.
Yeah, it is.
So our first action on Peter, Jack 6 suited. He has a think about it and raises it up to 25.
I think it's becoming clear that a suited jack hand is the preferable hand to play this evening.
apparently. So we see Blair makes the call with ace 10, so that's one of Tanya's aces out, and Tom, looking down at pocket sevens here, also makes the call.
4 folds. Folds from Brian. 20 more.
We also have a call from, oh no, a fold from Brian. I thought that was a call.
It did look like it. It was hard to see from that angle.
So Tanya now looking down at her aces with a bunch of people before her.
$105.
105 the raise.
Fold.
Yeah.
So Buck moves out of it with his suited cards. He had the same suit as Peter, I believe. Peter hoping to get in there with his jack suited. You can see the frustration as he folds.
Didn't work out so well.
And now Blair having a think about this. From what he knows about these players and looking down at his ace-10, he would have liked to have seen a flop, but he's probably thinking his ace-10's no good and he moves away. Leaving the two pocket pairs here. Tom and Tanya have a big history.
Indeed they do. They've been playing poker together for quite a long time now. And, you know, Tom has his thoughts about how Tanya plays, and he probably decides that given he's in position there and he's got a pair, he can take a flop with it.
Interesting flop for both of these hands as well. A pair of 2s and a 6, so they've both got an overpair.
Yeah, this is a flop that is pretty favourable for both hands, really. Obviously, Tanya's aces, it's a good flop there, and Tom, I mean, it's not often you flop all undercards to pocket sevens, so...
That's right, yeah.
So given that flop, I think with Tanya's bet, Tom has no option but to call and see what happens.
So that was 120 the bet from Tanya. He made the call. The king comes on the turn. Alarm bells potentially if Tanya does bet this turn for Tom.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, some of those hands she might have re-raised with that didn't have anything yet, such as the obvious ace-king, maybe even some other strong king hands.
That's right. An ace-king continuation bet on that flop would have been a pretty feasible hand to put her on at this point. The bet 235. What was that? About a little bit under the half the pot at that point?
Yeah, close to half pot, I think. Which puts Tom in an awkward situation here. So I'm not sure exactly what his thought process is, but I think he just decides he's going to get a little bit sticky here and just hang in there and see what the river comes out and see what Tanya does and make his decision from there.
Maybe a bad read. Maybe he just doesn't believe that she's got it.
Well, Tom's a friend of mine, but sometimes he likes to be a hero, and he's probably thinking right now that what he knows of Tanya, he decides that she's, you know, pretty aggressive, and he decides on the turn, well, he can at least see the river and then make one final decision there, depending on what Tanya does. I mean, it's not an easy spot for him. I'm sure he's not feeling very comfortable right now, particularly when Tanya bets 750.
That's right. One of the much coveted gold tiles out in play now. They're worth $1,000 each. She bets 750 of it.
Well, maybe that was enticing Tom. The gold tile.
See, he's really having a good think about this at the moment. Looks up at the ceiling. I don't think that's going to help you.
Yeah, I think he's probably thinking right now, why didn't she just check the river?
Yeah, well, there's a good reason for that.
That's true.
She's trying to get as much as she can out of this hand, and 750 into a pot of just shy of 1,000 now. So it's a pretty good bet, I think, at this point.
Yeah, it's a big bet, so it could be seen as, you know, looking a bit like a bluff. Tom may have read it that way. I mean, I remember sitting there thinking about this, and I've played with Tanya a fair bit too, and it's very difficult when you're in Tom's spot there and you've decided to get to the river, because you're thinking, Tanya has the ability to make a play here. Yep. Against a lot of people, it might be an easy fold, but against Tanya, not quite so much.
He's thinking, I've invested a lot in this hand, and if she's bluffing and I let it go, I'm going to feel pretty bad.
Well, perhaps he's worried that if he folds and then she shows him a bluff, he's going to be on such tilt for the rest of the night that factors into his decision. I know it has for me in the past, making a call. So worried that if I see a bluff, I'll go off the deep end and lose more money.
Not that Tom's trying to make a read on Tanya here, but she's absolutely rock solid sitting there. He does make the call.
Yes, he does. Well, you know, the hero call doesn't always work out.
No, that's right. All right, moving to the next hand now. We're looking at a couple of folds straight out the gate. Over to Paul. This is your little call. Raise, sorry, to 30.
Jack 9 suited, just mixing things up a bit. I've seen all these other suited Jack hands, so apparently there's an affinity for suited Jacks all night, so yeah.
Straight into Tanya. Tanya with King Queen off, re-raises to 120.
90 more, 120 total.
Yeah, I think she's just playing the momentum. She's been doing quite well to date. She's up a decent amount, I think, at this point.
You see you move out of it?
Yeah, I give her credit. And I think it's pretty good. Like, I like seeing a flop with it, but not for that price. Out of position, I'm not that keen.
So pretty huge flop here for Brian. He's hit 2 pairs, aces and eights.
And I think he just leads right in.
He does.
That's 150.
That's about half pot.
Yeah, just over, I believe. Just over half the pot there with his 2 pair. Of course, there's a couple of spades on the board there. I think Brian's probably expecting to take this down, actually, on the flop.
You could well be right. I mean, yeah, he's just leading to protect his hand. And
such a sick turn for Brian, still with his 2 pair.
Really
suddenly no good versus Tanya's nut straight. He bets out 200 at this point. Again, it's getting a little bit scary, that board for him now. I think he really just wants to get her out of the hand. Of course, she's not going anywhere.
No, not at this point. And Tanya's just thinking about what her next move is, and she puts out one of the big chips again. And it's surprisingly Brian just shoves all in very quickly.
Yeah, it was a very, very quick decision, wasn't it? And I think he already knows. He makes the shove and sort of already knows that he's behind. I mean, he's not drawing dead, but he's drawing pretty thin at this point with 4 outs.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was surprising. I think he has a very strong hand. I think you can see by the look on his face when Tanya raises and then he goes all in, like you said, he kind of resigned himself to the fact that he was probably behind, but decided that he just didn't want to lay it down.
That's right, yeah. That point, that was Brian out of the event, unfortunately for him. Big hand running into Tanya, and she made quite a lot out of that pot. She's sitting at almost 6,000 in front of her at this stage. This next hand, we see everyone folding around to Scott with Jack 9 suited and Eric with Ace 3 suited.
A few speculative hands there. I think is it blind versus blind there? I'm not sure what positions they're at there.
No, not. I think that Scott's on the big blind and Eric was under the gun, and he raised it to 30 from under the gun with Ace 3 of diamonds.
Okay, interesting.
So the computer took a little while to catch up with us there, but we see the diamonds, 2 diamonds on the flop, helping Eric out with a flush draw, and he's betting that one with his ace high flush draw. Bets 110 on the turn, and of course, poor Scott, having flopped 2 pair, is in a similar situation as Brian was last hand.
Yeah, he's looks like he's called the flop, and then he's gone for a little check raise on the turn there with his 2-pair, which is fair enough. I mean, he thinks his hand's very likely good against any hand that Eric could have, which is a pretty reasonable assumption to make.
The other thing to bear in mind is that, like you, actually worse than you, this night was a very tough night, a rough night for Scott. He got into quite a lot of hands, and he was getting hammered, quite honestly. And I'm sure that frustration is being felt by him right now.
Absolutely.
Of course, this card is a killer for him as well.
Well, I might just pause it there for a second.
Yeah, sure.
I would just note that on that river, the upside, if there is any upside for Scott there, it's that the river's a card that at least it so obviously gets the straight and the obvious straight draw of Queen 10 and the flush draw gets there. So at least it might put the brakes on him so he can try to mitigate his loss here.
Yep, that's a good point. Shall we restart?
Yep.
Okay, so that king comes. He does make the check over to Eric. Now at this point, you'd be thinking maybe that flush has been made. Just wondering what Eric's been playing with all this time to be betting, which I think is part of what's got him a little bit caught in this hand. Betting the draw is something that catches a lot of players unawares when it comes anyway.
Yeah, it's a difficult spot for Scott because obviously the draws get there, but also if there are a few other hands that are less likely but possible, like pocket kings, king jack suited or something like that.
Yeah. He does make the call for 500 there on the river. Eric showing his nut flush. And that was it. Unfortunately for Scott that hand.
Yeah, it was a tough night for Scott. We all have them. It's never fun, but it's one of the aspects of playing poker. So yeah, you have to get used to it. But you accept it as a thing, but you don't really ever, you're never happy about it.
That's right. All right. Well, that concludes our video for the night. Paul, I'd like to thank you very much for joining me here, and we look forward to seeing you on Tuesday, I believe.
Yes. Thanks very much for having me.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.